This story is titled, My Fiancée Asked for a Break to Date Her Ex, saying she'd come back if it didn't work, so I made sure she came back to nothing. Hey folks, after lurking around here for what feels like forever, I figured it's time to share what's been going on with me lately. Alright, so here's the deal. My name's Liam, I'm 30, and up until recently, I thought I was marrying the love of my life, Tessa. We'd been together for 4 years, and for most of that time, I was sure we were solid. But now I'm sitting here wondering how I didn't see this coming sooner. Tessa and I met through a mutual friend at a birthday party. She was funny, confident, and had this no-nonsense attitude that I really liked. I'd dated before, but no one clicked with me the way she did. We hit it off fast and moved in together after a year. Things felt natural, like we were on the same page about everything. Careers, marriage, starting a family someday. She was freelancing as a graphic designer, and I worked in marketing, so our schedules kind of synced up. Life wasn't flashy, but it was good. We'd been talking about getting married for a while, but it wasn't until last year that I popped the question. It wasn't anything fancy, just a quiet dinner at home, just the two of us. Tessa seemed thrilled. She cried, hugged me, and said yes. That night, we started planning the future. A fall wedding, a small guest list, and this cozy little venue by the lake. It felt like everything was falling into place. Or so I thought. The first red flags weren't huge, obvious things. They were small, sneaky little cracks that I shrugged off because I didn't want to overthink. For example, Tessa's excitement about the wedding planning started fading after a few months. At first, she was all in, sending me Pinterest boards, scrolling through wedding dresses, and asking me about the little details, like if I preferred tulips or roses for the centerpieces. But then it just stopped. I'd ask her stuff like, "Hey, have you decided on your bridesmaids yet?" And she'd brush it off. "Not yet. I'm still thinking about it," she'd say, over and over again. The same with her dress, the cake, even the music. Every decision we'd been so excited about just became this thing she wanted to delay. "There's still time," she'd tell me. It was like the wedding was an afterthought. At the time, I told myself it was just stress. Wedding planning can be overwhelming, right? Plus, Tessa had a lot going on with her work. I figured she'd snap out of it eventually. What I didn't realize was that her lack of enthusiasm wasn't about the wedding. It was about us. The real slap in the face came one night when we were hanging out with some friends. Someone brought that stupid TikTok game. We listen, but we don't judge. You've probably seen it. It's that game where you answer personal questions, and everyone's supposed to keep a straight face and not judge, although everyone judges. Anyway, everything was going fine until someone asked, "If you could relive one relationship, which one would it be?" Without even thinking, Tessa said, "Oh, probably Dylan." Just like that. Dylan, her college ex, the one who cheated on her. The second she said it, the room got awkwardly quiet. She laughed nervously and tried to backtrack, saying, "I mean, not like I'd actually want to. It's just, a big part of my past." I wanted to call her out right there, but we were with friends, so I let it slide. Later, when we were alone, I asked her about it. "What was that about Dylan? Why would you say you'd relive that relationship?" She just shrugged it off like it was no big deal. "It was a stupid game, Liam. Don't take it so seriously." She smiled and changed the subject. I didn't push it because, honestly, I didn't want to start a fight over something that might have been nothing. But deep down, it stuck with me. After that, her behavior got harder to ignore. She was on her phone more often, scrolling through her messages with this sly little smile. She started making vague excuses about why she couldn't hang out or why she'd cancel plans at the last minute. "Oh, sorry, I just have a lot of work to catch up on tonight," she'd say. Or, "I promised my mom I'd visit this weekend." The excuses weren't exactly suspicious, but they were piling up. It felt like I was suddenly less of a priority. Then came the Friday night that changed everything. I got home early from work, excited to spend the evening with Tessa. I was thinking we could order in and binge watch something, just a low-key night. When I walked in, though, the vibe was off. She was sitting on the couch with her laptop, but she wasn't working. She was just sitting there, staring at the screen, completely zoned out. "Hey, I'm home," I said, trying to break the tension. "You're early," she replied, like that was a bad thing. I brushed it off and went to the kitchen to start making dinner. But the silence in the house was suffocating. Usually she'd be asking me how my day was or telling me about hers, but tonight, nothing. Finally, I turned around and asked, "Everything okay?" She closed her laptop and looked at me. "Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about." And just like that, my stomach dropped. You know that feeling when you know something bad's about to happen, but you can't stop it? That was me, standing there like an idiot with a spatula in my hand. I walked over and sat across from her. "All right," I said. "What's going on?" She hesitated, like she was trying to find the right words. Then she just came out with it. "I've been thinking about us, And about Dylan. I swear, I almost laughed. Dylan, are you serious? What about him? She bit her lip and avoided my eyes. I think I need some time to figure things out. I want to take a break to see if there's still something there with him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want to take a break so you can date your ex? Are you out of your mind, Tessa? We're engaged. It's not like that, she said quickly, like she thought she could smooth this over. I need to know if I'm making the right choice with you. And if it doesn't work out, I promise I'll come back. That's when I realized just how deep her audacity ran. She thought I'd sit around and wait for her to figure out if I was good enough. At that moment, something inside me shifted. I didn't blow up, didn't yell. I just sat there staring at her, wondering how the hell I didn't see this coming. I didn't even know how to respond at first. My fiancé, just told me she wanted to take a break to explore things with her ex, Dylan. What do you even say to that? Finally, I managed to ask, so what exactly does this break mean to you? My voice came out calm, way calmer than I felt. She straightened up a little, like she'd been preparing for this conversation. I think we need some space to figure things out. I'll take some time to see if what I'm feeling about Dylan is real, and you can take time to reflect on us too. I couldn't believe the nerve. Wait, I said, leaning forward. You're saying you need to date your ex, but I need to reflect on us? What kind of backwards logic is that? Tessa sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. It's not about you doing something wrong, Liam. This is about me figuring out what I need. I felt she had rehearsed this. The way she was talking, the way she avoided eye contact, it was like she'd already decided this was happening. And now she just needed me to roll with it. You know this sounds insane, right? I said. You don't just put your fiancé on hold while you go play what if with some guy who treated you like garbage. Her face hardened, and for the first time, I saw just how stubborn she could be. I'm not asking for permission, Liam. I'm telling you what I need. That one hit different. I wasn't just upset anymore. I was angry. I stood up and started pacing, trying to calm myself down. So what, Tessa? You're just gonna pack a bag and head over to Dylan's place? Is that your big plan? No, she snapped. It's not like that. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I need clarity before we move forward. I owe it to myself to know I'm making the right decision. You owe it to yourself, I repeated, laughing bitterly. And what about what you owe me? We're engaged, Tessa. We're supposed to be building a life together. And now you're telling me you need to test drive your ex to make sure I'm good enough? I never said you weren't good enough, she shot back, her voice rising. But if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, I have to be certain. And right now, I'm not. That was it. It wasn't just that she wanted to explore things with Dylan. It was that she wasn't sure about me. After 4 years together, after all the plans we'd made, she still wasn't sure. It hit me all at once. She didn't even realize how hurtful and ridiculous her request was. She thought this was reasonable, like I'd just sit there while she worked through whatever nonsense was spinning in her head. I stopped pacing and looked at her. Really looked at her. You know what? Sure, I said, my tone flat. Take your break. She blinked, caught off guard by how easily I agreed. Liam, I'm not trying to hurt you. I need space to figure things out. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. All right, if that's what you need. She hesitated, like she was expecting me to argue, to fight for her. When I didn't, she stood up, grabbed her laptop, and mumbled, I'll stay at my mom's for a bit. This isn't forever. We'll talk when I've had some time. Okay, I said simply. She glanced at me, unsure of how to respond, then disappeared into the bedroom. I could hear her moving around, throwing stuff into a bag. I stayed on the couch, calm on the surface, but my mind was already turning. If she wanted her break so bad, fine, let her have it. A few minutes later, I heard the front door close. She was gone, probably thinking she'd left me here to wait and wonder. Little did she know, I wasn't going to just sit around. She could have her fantasy, but I had my own plans now. I don't know how long I sat there before I finally snapped out of it. The first thing I did was grab my phone and call my buddy Noah. Noah's been my best friend since college, and he's the kind of guy who doesn't sugarcoat things. If I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling like my entire life had just fallen apart, he was the guy. Yo, what's up? He answered, his voice casual. Tessa wants to take a break to date her ex, I blurted out. There was a long pause. What the hell? He finally said. She said that to your face? Yep, I said, rubbing my temple. She packed a bag and left like it was no big deal. Said she needs clarity. Noah let out a low whistle. Dude, that's messed up. You okay? Not really, I admitted. I don't even know how to process this. 4 years, man. 4 years, and she's still hung up on Dylan. You want me to come over? He asked. We can order some food. Talk it out. Yeah, actually, that'd be great, I said. About an hour later, Noah showed up with pizza. He didn't even wait for me to explain the whole thing. He just listened as I vented about everything. By the time I finished, he was shaking his head. Bro, she's not worth this, he said. If she can't see what she has with you, that's on her. You're better off without someone who's gonna treat you like a second option. I nodded, but it didn't make me feel any better. It wasn't just about losing Tessa. It was about losing the future I thought we were building together. I'd pictured a life with her. Marriage, kids, all of it, and now it was just gone. We stayed up late, talking and watching TV, and for the first time in hours, I started to feel a little less like the ground was crumbling beneath me. I didn't have a plan yet, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let Tessa keep me on a leash while she figured out what she wanted. The next morning, my phone buzzed. I rolled over, half awake, and squinted at the screen. Tessa, of course. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a moment, my brain still foggy. She wants to talk? Seriously? After everything she laid out, now she wants to play the concerned fiancé? I thought she might have realized how stupid she sounded yesterday. I dragged myself to the kitchen to make coffee. There was no way I was dealing with this nonsense before caffeine. As I leaned against the counter, sipping my coffee, my mind raced. She really had the nerve to come back and act like I was the one who owed her patience. It wasn't anger I felt. At least not anymore. It was more disbelief. How could someone be so oblivious? So wrapped up in their own fantasy that they thought this kind of stunt was acceptable. But I wasn't about to let her see that. No. If she wanted to play this game, I'd play along. Except I wouldn't be the one losing. Finally, I picked up my phone and replied, "Sure, come over later." Short, simple. Let her think she's still in control. A few hours later, there she was, standing at the door like nothing had happened. She looked polished, like she'd spent way too much time trying to perfect that calm, collected look. Her hair was done, makeup flawless. I could tell she'd rehearsed this. She was ready to sell me whatever she'd come up with. I stepped aside and let her in without a word. She walked in like she still belonged here, sitting on the couch like it was any other day. "Thanks for letting me come by," she said softly like she was doing me a favor. I leaned against the wall. "What's up?" She took a deep breath, her hands clasped together like this was some big performance. "I've been thinking a lot," she began. "Here we go. And I think I've come up with a way for us to move forward," she continued, her tone too measured, too rehearsed. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "All right, let's hear it." "Well," she said, clearly building up to something she thought was genius. "I think the best thing for us right now is to put the wedding plans on hold, just temporarily, while I take the time I need to get clarity on everything. That way, we don't lose the progress we've made, and we can pick things back up once I'm sure about us." I stared at her, waiting for the twist. She wasn't joking. She actually thought this was reasonable. "That's your big plan?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," she said, nodding like she'd just solved a world crisis. "It's practical, Liam. We've put so much time, effort, and money into this relationship. I don't want to throw it all away over something that might not even matter in the long run. Something that might not even matter." That phrase kept bouncing around in my head. She was talking about us, our relationship, like it was some investment portfolio she didn't want to write off. I felt a laugh bubble up, but I held it back. "Not yet. Let her keep going." "You're okay with this, right?" she asked, tilting her head slightly, like she was genuinely confused why I hadn't reacted yet. "Sure," I said, shrugging. Her eyes flicked to mine, like she didn't quite believe I'd agreed so easily. "Wait, you're okay with it?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone even. "If that's what you need, go for it." She blinked, clearly thrown off. She'd probably expected me to argue, to fight, maybe even beg her to stay. Instead, I gave her nothing. "I just don't want you to think this means I don't care," she added quickly, trying to fill the silence. "I just need some space to figure out what I really want. It's not forever." "Got it," I said, nodding. For a moment, she just stared at me, trying to read my face. But I wasn't giving her anything. Let her stew in her own awkwardness. She stood up, smoothing her hands over her jeans. "I'll stay at my mom's for a bit," she said. "It's not forever. We'll talk once I've had some time." "All right," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She hesitated, like she wanted to say something more. But then she just grabbed her bag and headed for the door. "Thanks for understanding," she said, pausing before stepping out. I just nodded again, keeping my face blank. After she left, I stood there for a moment, wondering how I couldn't see her as a wife anymore. She was gone, figuring out her ex, and she actually thought I was sitting here, waiting for her to figure out if I was good enough to fit into her perfect little fantasy life. But she didn't get it. This wasn't her decision anymore. I walked over to the window and watched her car pull out of the driveway. She was probably feeling relieved, thinking she'd bought herself some time to figure things out with Dylan. Let her think that. The truth was, I'd already made my decision. I wasn't going to argue, wasn't going to fight for someone who thought it was okay to keep me on the back burner while she explored her doubts. She could have her break. She could have Dylan. I was done playing along. The funny thing is, I didn't even feel angry anymore. I felt free. It was like a switch had flipped in my head. All this time I'd been worried about what she wanted, what she needed, how I could fix things. But now it was about me. I sat down on the couch. I could already hear her voice in my head, weeks or maybe months from now, trying to spin her way back in. I made a mistake, Liam. I needed clarity, but now I see what I really want. Too late. Life doesn't work like that. I had no intention of sitting here, pining for her to come back. This wasn't about playing games or getting even. It was about moving forward. She'd made her choice, and so had I. I spent the next week setting things in motion. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clearing out every trace of her and taking back control. I started with the wedding plans. I grabbed my laptop and canceled everything. The venue, the photographer, the caterer. It all had to go. Some deposits were non-refundable, but who cares? It wasn't about the money. It was about closing this chapter for good. As I clicked through the emails, I couldn't help but smirk. She probably thought I was sitting at home, heartbroken, crying, waiting for her to know I'm better than her ex and come crawling back. She had no clue I was wiping her out of my life one email at a time. Then, the house. Funny thing, Tessa always acted like it was our home. She picked the paint colors, nagged me about throw pillows, and even insisted on those god-awful curtains in the living room. But here's what she never seemed to grasp. The house was mine. My name on the deed, my money in the mortgage. I called my buddy Noah, who hooked me up with a real estate agent. Within days, I had the paperwork ready to list it. My plan was simple. Sell the house, move on, and leave Tessa with absolutely nothing to come back to. She wanted space to figure out her life. She could do that from scratch. One part was almost too satisfying. Tessa had left all her stuff behind when she walked out. Clothes, books, and those ridiculous live, laugh, love signs she insisted on putting everywhere. I boxed it all up and drove it to her mom's place. No heads up, no texts. I just left it on the porch with a note. Here's your stuff. Good luck with Dylan. Was it petty? Maybe. Did I care? Not one bit. Then I sat there and waited. As expected, a week later, my phone buzzed. It was her. Can we talk? I think we need to clear the air. I laughed out loud. She must have realized her little fantasy with Dylan wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I couldn't resist seeing how this would play out. Sure, I replied. Come by tomorrow. The next day, she showed up, and the look on her face was priceless. She stepped inside and froze, her eyes darting around the bare walls, the empty shelves, the moving boxes stacked in the corner. What's going on here? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm selling the house, I said casually as if I'm talking to a neighbor, leaning against the counter. Her jaw dropped. You're what? Selling our house? It's not our house, Tessa, I said, letting that sink in. It's mine, and I don't need this much space anymore. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Why didn't you tell me? Why would I? You left, remember? I said, keeping my tone calm. Her face went pale. Wait, so you've been planning this? You're just moving on? I shrugged. What else was I supposed to do? Sit around and wait for you to come back? She shook her head, her voice rising. Liam, no. That's not what I meant when I said I needed time. I didn't think I'd what? Take you seriously? I interrupted. You said you needed space to figure out if you wanted me or Dylan, so I gave it to you. She took a step closer, her voice trembling. But I didn't mean it like this. I thought you understood. I wasn't ending things. I just needed clarity. I laughed, shaking my head. Clarity? Tessa, you didn't want clarity. You wanted a safety net. You thought you could run off, test the waters with Dylan, and then waltz back here like nothing happened. Sorry, but that's not how it works. Her composure completely cracked. Liam, please, I made a mistake. Dylan, he's not what I thought. He hasn't changed. I was stupid. I see that now. Please, don't do this. Don't throw us away. I crossed my arms, meeting her tear-filled eyes with a steady gaze. You're right about one thing, Tessa. You were stupid, but not just for running back to Dylan. You were stupid for thinking I'd let you treat me like a backup plan. She grabbed my arm, her voice desperate. I wasn't. I swear. I panicked. I was scared. But I know now that it's you. It's always been you. Please, we can fix this. We can still get married. I yanked my arm away, shaking my head. No, we can't. You made your choice, Tessa. You chose doubt. You chose Dylan. And now, I'm choosing me. Her face crumpled, and she started sobbing. Liam, please. I'll do anything to fix this. It's too late, I said firmly. You broke this. You don't get to come back and pretend it never happened. She stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Finally, realizing there was nothing left to say, she turned and walked out the door. And with that, Tessa was out of my life, or so I thought. I sold the house, moved into my new apartment, and started putting everything about her behind me. I wasn't bitter. I just didn't have the energy to keep dragging her baggage along. I thought I'd handled it cleanly, that we'd moved on separately. But Tessa? She wasn't done, and when she made her move, it wasn't head-on. The first sign something was off came in a phone call from my mom. I'd barely said hello before she launched into it. Liam, why am I hearing from Aunt Sharon that the wedding is canceled? Is this true? I froze, the words catching me off guard. The only people who knew the wedding was off were me and Tessa. I hadn't even told my family yet because, frankly, I didn't want to deal with their reaction. But now the news was out. Where did Aunt Sharon hear that? I asked cautiously, already suspecting the answer. From Tessa's mom. She's been telling everyone that you called off the wedding. Apparently, Tessa is heartbroken, and you're being unreasonable. I nearly dropped the phone. Heartbroken. Unreasonable. The audacity of her spinning this like I was the bad guy was almost impressive. She had been the one to walk away, the one who wanted to figure things out with her cheating ex. And now she was painting me as the villain? Mom, that's not what happened, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Tessa and I aren't together anymore. She made her choice and I moved on. Well, you need to do some damage control, she said, her tone sharp. Half the family is talking about this, and they all think you blindsided her. Damage control. That's what it came to now. Not only had Tessa managed to worm her way into my family's conversations, but she'd turned the entire thing into a pity party for herself. I should have let it go. I should have chalked it up to her being petty and left it at that. But when I got a call later that same day from my boss, I realized this wasn't just a family issue anymore. Hey Liam, I wanted to check in, my boss said cautiously. Is everything okay? I heard from a friend of mine. Apparently your ex is going through a tough time, and she mentioned your name. My ex mentioned my name? At work? She didn't give any details, but you know how these things spread. Just making sure it's not going to cause distractions here. I clenched my jaw, the pieces falling into place. Tessa hadn't just been telling her side of the story to family, she was dragging my name into her personal sob story with anyone who would listen. I thanked my boss for letting me know and hung up. My blood was boiling. This wasn't about closure or fixing things anymore. She was deliberately trying to sabotage my life, painting herself as the victim to anyone who would give her 5 minutes of attention. That was the last straw. I'd stayed quiet up until now, thinking it was the mature thing to do. But if she wanted to play games, I wasn't going to sit back and let her rewrite the narrative. The next day, I sent a group message to both of our families, keeping it short and to the point. Hi everyone, I wanted to address something. Tessa and I are no longer engaged, and it was a mutual decision after a lot of difficult conversation. I'd appreciate it if we could all respect each other's privacy and move forward without assigning blame. Thank you. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to cut off her nonsense before it spread further. Then I blocked her on everything. Phone, social media, email. She didn't deserve access to my life anymore. Not after how she'd tried to twist things. The fallout wasn't easy. My mom wasn't thrilled about me handling it so bluntly, and a couple of relatives still whispered about how I could throw away such a good thing. But I knew the truth, and that was enough. All what my ex-fiancée did was show me how little she respected me or the relationship we'd had. If anything, she made me even more grateful that I'd cut her out for good. So here I was, finally drawing the line. Blocking her was like flipping a switch, cutting the power to the drama machine she'd been running for weeks. It wasn't just about silencing her. It was about reclaiming my peace. The first thing I did was take control of the narrative. People love to fill in the blanks when you stay quiet, and I'd given Tessa way too much space to craft her story. So I called up the people whose opinions mattered to me. My close friends, my siblings, and my mom. I laid it all out, no embellishments, just the facts. Look, I told my mom over coffee, I didn't throw away a good thing. She bailed on me for her ex, plain and simple. I tried to be civil, but she's out here spinning tales like she's the victim. I'm not letting her trash my name. Mom gave me her classic disapproving look, the one that could make a grown man feel like a scolded teenager. I get it, Liam, but you could have been more tactful. Tactful? Mom, she's airing our dirty laundry to anyone who'll listen. I'm done playing nice. That seemed to click for her. She sighed, finally conceding, I just want you to be happy. Don't let her drag you down. From there, I made it my mission to shut down the whispers wherever they popped up. If someone brought up Tessa, I gave them the short version. It didn't work out, and she's not the person I thought she was. End of story. Most people got the hint and dropped it, but a few needed a bit more directness. Like my cousin Mark, who cornered me at a family barbecue. Hey man, I heard you left Tessa high and dry. What's up with that? I stared at him, barely believing the audacity. You heard wrong, Mark. She ditched me to figure things out with her ex. If you want the full story, ask her. I'm not playing the gossip game. He backed off pretty quick after that. While I was busy cleaning up the social mess, I also had to deal with work. My boss, thankfully, was chill about the whole thing. I explained the situation in private, emphasizing that it wouldn't affect my performance. He nodded and said, I figured there was more to it. Just keep your head down, and don't let it get to you. But Tessa wasn't done trying to stir the pot. A week later, I got an email from a mutual friend of ours, Sarah. She wasn't taking sides, but she felt the need to share something. Hey Liam, I thought you should know Tessa's been posting stuff online. Nothing outright nasty, but it's obvious she's talking about you. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I thanked Sarah and checked it out. Sure enough, Tessa had been posting vague, passive-aggressive quotes about betrayal and heartbreak. Stuff like, some people will throw away diamonds to chase stones. Real subtle. At first, I was tempted to respond, to call her out for the nonsense. But then I stopped myself. Why stoop to her level? She wanted a reaction, and I wasn't giving her one. Instead, I reported her post for harassment and moved on. That was the real turning point for me, realizing I didn't owe her or anyone an explanation anymore. My life wasn't a public forum for her to dissect and manipulate. If she wanted to live in the past, that was her problem, not mine. One night, sitting with my buddy Jake, he said something that really stuck with me. Man, you dodged a bullet. Imagine if all this came out after you were married. You're better off, trust me. He was right. As painful as it had been, breaking things off with Tessa, before we tied the knot was the best thing that could have happened. It wasn't just about avoiding the drama. Being with her had blinded me to what I really wanted in a partner. Someone who had my back, not someone who'd turn on me the second things got tough. By the time a few months had passed, Tessa's antics started to fade into the background. People moved on, and so did I. The family stopped bringing her up, the whispers at work died down, and her online posts eventually dried up. It was like she finally realized she couldn't keep milking the situation for sympathy. I'd like to say I forgave her, but honestly, I didn't. And that's okay. Not every wrong has to be forgiven to be left behind. I don't hate her. I just don't care anymore. The real closure came when I realized I wasn't waiting for her to apologize or for people to see my side. I was living my life for me, not for anyone else's validation. So I guess all I want to say is that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that save you. Cutting ties with Tessa wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It taught me to trust my gut, to stand up for myself, and to never settle for less than I deserve. Looking back now, I don't regret a thing. I'm in a better place, mentally, emotionally, and even physically. Life's too short to waste on people who don't value you. And if I've learned anything, it's this. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well. And with that, this chapter of my life is officially closed. Thanks for sticking until the end.